Imagine driving a Rolls-Royce, but with an engine that has almost as much power as a C7 Corvette Z06. That's this car. And better yet, this is a 2014, which means you can pick this car up right now for just 40% of its original value. This car, when it first came out, was over $200,000, but now used examples of this car at reasonable miles start at around $70,000. Although this car wasn't marketed as a sports car in any way whatsoever, it still gives you plenty of that. Under the hood of this car is a twin-turbo, 6-liter, 12-cylinder engine that makes 616 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. Just for reference, that is 3 times the amount of cylinders as my car has and 2 times the amount of turbos. But despite those crazy numbers, the 0 to 60 in this car is claimed to be only 4.3 seconds. Reason being is because this car weighs over 5,400 pounds, which is actually pretty good for a 5,400 pound car. But let's actually test the 0 to 60 and see how it does. So when you floor it from a stop, this thing does not pick up until you're at around 4,000 RPM. But once you hit 4,000, this thing will actually really push you back in your seat. So for what this car is, I'm gonna grade the acceleration as a B. Again, that's not the point of this car. It's just super surprising that it has that acceleration anyway. Now that we know this thing is surprisingly fast and weighs 5,400 pounds, it is crucial that this car can brake when you need it to. So in the front, you get 6 piston brakes, and in the back you get 4 piston brakes. Let's do a 60 to 0 test and see how well this car does.
Ready, set, go. This car is not made for that.
I'm gonna grade the brakes as a C. Now, I wasn't even gonna bother doing a cornering test on this car, but we always do, so let's do it.
Like here, maybe we could go 35. Let's see. We're going 40. Let's try to do it at 40. Nope. That'll be it. Yep, that'll be 30. So maybe 10 over the suggested limit. And that's okay. You know, I'm not expecting much more from this car. If you're going to consider this as a performance car in any way whatsoever, it's just for interstate cruising as comfortably as possible, not for mountain cruising in any way whatsoever. But we're here, and now we definitely know that answer.
The cornering, I'm gonna give it an F. It is awful. But now let's get to the super interesting part of this review. The whole point of this car, starting off with the exterior design. So this car has one of the most beautiful front ends I have ever seen. When the sun hits it, it's almost like a chandelier glistening. The two things that obviously give this away as something that's special is that grille and also those headlights. Look at how detailed all of that is. And you do also get the Bentley logo in the front, but this is 2014, so it's not retractable like the newer ones. I will say, even with how beautiful the front end of this car is, it does not catch as many eyes as you would think. I noticed that a lot of Mercedes and BMW owners would look at me, but any like Mustang, Corvette owners, I don't even think they knew what this was. So this really is for a special type of person. You need to be a cultured, luxurious CEO. Now, the side of this car does not have as much presence to it as you would think. First of all, it has this really nice trim all around the windows and a little vent and logo right on the side, and some pretty nice wheels, but nothing that gives this away as a car that was $200,000 when it was new. However, that is not a complaint in any way whatsoever, because when you're being chauffeured over to the executive board meeting, you don't want a bunch of people looking at you and taking pictures. You just want to go in peace while you're working on your laptop on the airplane tray in the back that we'll talk about in a second. Now, the back of this car does have a very distinguishable design. First of all, the taillights are a little bit weird, but the cool oval shape they make when you're hitting the brakes match the exhaust shape perfectly. And when I see that on the back end of a car, I'm like, that's a Bentley. And of course, you also get another Bentley logo in the back, but once again, the back end is just not very distinguishable as a $200,000 car. For me, the front end is what gives it away. So as a whole, I'm gonna grade the exterior as an A. Normally I wouldn't, but because this isn't some supercar, sports car type of vehicle, it's in its own class, and for what it is, an A, I think is pretty fair. Now, how about the sound that this car makes? You remember what's under the hood of this? The coolest engine in a car that I've ever driven in my life. But remember, it's designed to be luxury. Let's take a listen to how it sounds. You'll notice right away that it's nothing like loud and extremely obnoxious. It's just a high quality muffled sound. I was never expecting to hear a Lamborghini type of sound from this 12-cylinder twin turbo engine. I was expecting to hear exactly what we just heard. Again, it's in its own class and it's supposed to be luxury, not rowdy. All in all, I'm gonna give the exhaust sound a B. Now this is where things get good. Right when you open the door of the driver's seat in this car, you are immediately granted with the design of a mansion on wheels. This door panel alone is probably more expensive than my entire net worth. You get this beautiful mix of materials, authentic wood, nice stitched leather, and even look at the door sill of this car. That pattern you see right there had to be laser cut for the door sill. And look at the seats that come on this car. Beautiful quilted leather. You get the Bentley logo right on your headrest, and it is just so nice and comfortable to sit in. Now, when you do take a seat in this thing, you are presented with the most comfortable steering wheel I have ever felt in my entire life. You get this beautifully designed wood, more leather. This is what I imagine a super yacht built for the land should feel like. So to jump over to the gauge cluster on this car, it is surrounded by even more wood, this beautiful trim going all over the gauge cluster. Instead of an RPM gauge with all these tick marks everywhere in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Oh, Bentley. Now here is where things get interesting with the interior of this car. So starting with the stick, this thing is super cool, not just because of the design or the fact that the Bentley B is what you push in to change from park, reverse, neutral, drive, or sport, but you can actually see inside of this little gearbox here. And also with this stick, you can shift it to the right and manually shift gears. If you push it up, you go up a gear, and down, you drop a gear. Or you can use some of the strangest or most unique paddle shifters I have ever seen in my life. They almost look like wings. They're these black things that you push towards you to drop a gear or go up a gear, and they kind of get in the way of the turn signal and the windshield wipers. That's just something that takes a while to get used to, because the paddle shifters are exactly where the turn signals are in most cars, so you find yourself continuously hitting the paddle shifters. And right next to your heated and cooled seat buttons, you have a little suspension button, which pops up in the infotainment system, more on that in a second, and you can adjust how comfortable you want your suspension to be. And next to your suspension button is your rear sunshade. Press that and your backseat passengers will be protected from the sun. Of course. And it just keeps getting better. The button next to that one is to raise or lower the ride height of your car, which, by the way, this one can do automatically based on which speed you're going. At speeds of over 100 miles an hour, this thing will automatically adjust the ride height to give you the best experience possible. Now, also in the center console, you have two armrests, one for the driver, one for the passenger. You can actually lift these things up in two different ways to get more storage, but even the material under this is the most satisfying thing I have ever touched. Bentley did not need to do that, but they did. In the front of this car, this infotainment system is very outdated. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. And by work, I mean respond to when you touch it. It is very, very picky, and that is my one major complaint about this interior. But there's also a button in there that says speed. And if you click that, assuming it's working and actually responding to you touching it, you get a setting between comfort, normal, and maximum. I assume that is to tell the car what you plan on doing, because when I select maximum, it was way more sensitive about what the tire pressures were. So if you're planning on going out and just doing high-speed runs or going super fast, this car wants to be in optimal condition for that. And right above the infotainment system, you get two air vents that are controlled by these absolutely beautiful tabs you either push in or pull. Probably the most luxurious way I have ever seen to adjust the airflow through an air vent. I love it. And right in between your two air vents, you also get a Bentley clock. It's pretty small, but just a subtle, nice, luxurious touch. Now, when you look at the passenger seat next to the driver, you realize it's actually not that special. There's not a lot of like buttons or settings or cool technology over there. It just continues that nice, classy design. But the back seats are where you want to be. Right when you open up the door to the back seats, you immediately notice that this car was meant to have a chauffeur drive it and you sit in the back. Of course, the door panel in the back maintains that same absolutely beautiful, luxurious design. Same with the door sill, but you notice there's quite a bit of different things back there than the front. The first and most noticeable one are the two screens that are on the backs of the headrest for the front seats. And for those, you have a little tab that you pull up near your footwell where you can insert a CD or an HDMI and play whatever you want. The second thing is you get these airplane styled pull-out trays that just happen to be more luxurious than the trays that are on airplanes, because why not? And in the back of this car, you also have your own personal retractable touchscreen device that allows you to control tons of features around the car. First of all, inside of this screen, there's a button you can press that raises or lowers the sunshade if you don't want to tell your chauffeur to do it. Second, if you click the little Bentley button, you're able to actually see the car's speedometer in real time. So if your chauffeur is driving a little bit too crazy, you can tell him to slow it down. And of course, in that screen, you also get climate settings, but you can see the map, you can change the radio station, you could do pretty much everything from that little device that you could in the front, other than steer the car, speed up and slow down. Also in the back, you get cup holders that even have nice material that hold your drink. Imagine that. And there's a little secret compartment. If you lower that thing, you notice there's a lock. Is that a safe where you store your $10 million? No, it's just secret access to your trunk, which, well, is where you have your $10 million stored. And of course, on the roof of this car, you have lighting control for the front and the back, and a sunroof for the front because why not? But even the materials they use for the roof of this car is nicer than the nicest materials on my personal car. This is by far the most beautiful car I have ever stepped in my life. The only plastic I could spot is near the ignition key, and my only complaint is the infotainment system, and that is literally it. As a whole, I'm going to grade this interior as an S. And there are two things that this car was built for: the interior and the next category we're about to talk about, which is the comfort that this car has. So when I first stepped in this car and took it for a drive on the interstate, I felt like I was in an isolated room that was just floating down the road. Now, I know for a fact it's not on the level as Rolls-Royce, but you can just barely hear the noise outside of the car. If a car comes flying past you just 3 feet away, all you hear is a little psh. When you go over bumps in this car, it's just this nice, soft little bloop. Let's go for a little POV drive, and you'll see what I mean.
Let me be quiet and just listen to the surrounding noise. You get almost no noise. When you're at 80 miles an hour, the only thing you hear is some wind noise from all the wind hitting the windshield. But other than that, there was a bump right there, and it's just this nice, soft cruise right over it. I mean, this thing is just a pleasure. This reminds me of, oh, he's having fun on these roads. This reminds me of a car where like you just get off of a 12-hour shift at your work or whatever you do, and this thing will just give you a pleasant ride back to your house. It is so nice. You can use the steering wheel, just turn it with 2 fingers. Not 1, it definitely requires 2. But oh my gosh, this whole car is just so pleasant. It's like a little getaway vacation, but in a car.
Out of all the cars I've reviewed, I have never given the interior design an S, and neither have I for comfort. But for comfort, this one's getting an S. Now, how about this car's reliability? I did a lot of research about people who own this car. Mind you, there's not a lot of stories or information out there, and a lot of people had nothing but good things to say. However, I can tell you right now, this thing has 37,000 miles on it. And about 20 minutes ago, when I was playing around with the adjustable ride height, that thing said it just stopped working, but it's working again now. Again, with the infotainment system kind of acting wonky. And I'm now doing my POV drive, and we have here. That is a $100,000 check engine. I'm not sure if that's actually like a serious thing, but what's with all the online ratings of everyone saying it's perfect? I'm not experiencing perfection in any way whatsoever. And in the back, you press the B logo to open up the trunk, but I've had some experiences where I pressed it, I heard the motor, but it didn't open. Those things are all gonna be thousands of dollars to fix. I imagine the adjustable ride height is probably like 10 grand. If you were to just go off the online ratings and not actually get in one yourself and just check if every single thing works, you would probably rank this car higher than it's supposed to be. And finally, the cost of ownership, the category where my dreams are crushed in every single video. So like I said, for $70,000, you can start to find these cars with reasonable miles on them. But just after mentioning the things regarding reliability, it's not going to be a fun time if things like that start to break. Mind you, just every single year with regular servicing and oil changes, expect that to cost you $4,000 annually. And if anything serious goes wrong with the engine or the transmission, that's really where the money is. Let me know what you guys think about this car, and would you buy one? What's your favorite part about this, by the way? Mine is right between the interior and the comfort. I'm going to go with the interior because it's just so beautiful. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you want to see more luxury cars like this, because this was a very unique experience for me. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.